Society has lied to you about solitude. While the world screams that you need constant companionship, infinite connections, and external approval to be happy, there's an ancient truth that has been deliberately hidden. The most transformative moments of your life happen when you're completely alone with yourself. Think for a moment. When was the last time you were truly alone? I'm not talking about those empty moments where you distract your mind with your phone, shows, or any noise that might silence your own thoughts. I'm talking about that deep, almost disturbing silence where there's no escape but to face who you really are. Most people fear this encounter. We live in an age where silence has become unbearable, where solitude is seen as a failure, a sign of social inadequacy. But the great masters of antiquity knew something our civilization has forgotten. Solitude isn't the opposite of connection. It's the path to the deepest connection that exists, the connection with yourself. Buddha found enlightenment under a tree, completely alone. Jesus withdrew to the desert for 40 days. Socrates spent hours in silent contemplation, so much so that his disciples would worry about him. Marcus Aurelius wrote his Meditations in solitary military tents in the middle of brutal campaigns. These weren't men running from the world. They were men discovering the inner world that most never dare to explore. Modern psychology has finally begun to understand what the ancients always knew. Dr. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the courageous encounter with all parts of ourselves, including those we prefer to ignore. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens, he said. But awakening requires courage. It requires you to sit with your fears, your insecurities, your failures, and discover that at the center of all of it exists something unshakable. Maybe you've already felt this. Those rare moments when, by chance, you found yourself alone, perhaps driving on an empty road, walking on a deserted beach, or waking before dawn when the world still sleeps. There was an instant, even if brief, where you felt something different, a peace that didn't depend on anything external, a strength that didn't need to be validated by anyone, a clarity that cut through all the confusion of daily life. But then, almost immediately, you probably got distracted. You turned on the radio, grabbed your phone, found some form of fulfillment. Why? Because we've been conditioned to believe that this silence is empty, when in truth it's full of possibilities. Revelatory solitude isn't about being physically isolated. It's about creating internal space, even in the middle of a crowd. It's about learning to dwell within yourself with the same tranquility you would dwell in a familiar home. But here's a question that could change everything. What if the strength you seek in the external world already exists within you, waiting to be discovered? I know this might sound scary. We live in a culture that teaches us that value comes from productivity, that happiness comes from achievements, that peace comes from perfect circumstances. The idea of finding all of this within ourselves, without depending on anything or anyone, can seem impossible or even selfish. Maybe you're one of those people who keeps constantly busy. Your schedule is always full. Your mind always processing the next task, the next commitment, the next distraction. And when there's a moment of pause, you feel a familiar restlessness. That sensation that you should be doing something, anything, except simply being. Or maybe you're the type who seeks constant validation. Your social media is compulsively checked, not for real pleasure, but out of a desperate need to confirm that you exist, that you matter, that you haven't been forgotten by the world. Each like is a small dose of relief, each comment temporary proof that you're not alone. There's also that type of person who fills their life with superficial relationships, not out of genuine love for human connection, but out of terror of the silence that comes when the voices stop. You can be in a room full of people and still feel a deep emptiness because none of these connections touch the part of you that most needs to be touched, yourself. The painful truth is that most of us have been running from ourselves for so long that we don't even recognize our own company anymore. We've built identities based on others' opinions, made choices based on external expectations, entire lives based on the approval of people who might not even know who we really are. But there's hope in this pain. There's power in this awareness, because the first step to any real transformation is honestly recognizing where we are. And if you've made it this far, if something in these words is resonating in your chest, it's because there's a part of you, maybe small, maybe whispering quietly, that knows there's another way. This part of you remembers moments from childhood when you could spend hours playing alone, creating entire worlds in your imagination without needing approval or company. It remembers those rare instances in adult life when you felt an inexplicable peace, a strength that didn't depend on external circumstances, a connection to something greater that transcended the need for validation. If this idea has already resonated with you, imagine what's coming next. Subscribe to not miss this journey of inner discovery, because what you're about to learn could completely transform your relationship with solitude and with life. Now, I want to share with you a perspective that might sound radical. Solitude isn't something to be cured or avoided. It's a portal to a version of yourself you might have never fully known. The ancients knew this. In Hinduism, there's the concept of svadhyaya, the study of oneself. We're not just talking about casual introspection, but a deep and systematic investigation of one's own nature. Yogis retreated to caves not out of hatred for the world, but out of love for discovery. They understood that before you can genuinely contribute to the world, you need to know who you are when all the masks fall away. In Roman Stoicism, Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Every morning when I wake up, I tell myself today I will meet interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness." But he didn't write this with bitterness. He wrote as someone who had learned to find inner stability independent of outer chaos. This strength didn't come from isolation, but from deep self-knowledge. Modern neuroscience confirms what the ancients intuited. When we practice conscious solitude, not the solitude of escape, but the solitude of presence, our brain literally reconstructs itself. The default mode network, responsible for repetitive thoughts and anxious ruminations, calms down. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for decision-making and self-control, strengthens. We develop what researchers call metacognition, the ability to observe our own mental processes without being enslaved by them. But how does this work in practice? How do you transform moments of solitude into sources of strength instead of wells of anxiety? First, you need to redefine what it means to be alone. Transformative solitude isn't about hiding from the world. It's about creating a sacred space within yourself, a place you can return to regardless of where you are or who you're with. This is a skill, not an accident. Start small. 10 minutes in the morning before the world wakes up. No phone, no music, no distractions, just you and your breath. At first, your mind will protest violently. It will bombard you with to-do lists, worries about the future, regrets about the past. This is normal. This is the mind doing what it always has, trying to keep you too busy to question your own narratives. But with time, something extraordinary happens. You begin to realize that you are not your thoughts. You are the one who observes thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are the conscious space in which emotions arise and disappear. This realization is revolutionary because it means you are not at the mercy of your internal states. You are the context in which they occur. Second, learn the difference between solitude and isolation. Isolation is running from connections out of fear or resentment. Conscious solitude is creating internal space so your connections can be more authentic. When you don't desperately need external validation, you can love more freely, When you're not running from yourself, you can be genuinely present with others. Third, use solitude as a laboratory to experiment with who you really want to be. Away from judgmental stares and social expectations, you can test new thoughts, explore neglected aspects of your personality, ask questions you might never have dared ask in public. Who would you be if you weren't afraid of judgment? What dreams would you pursue if you didn't need anyone's approval? What version of yourself would you choose if you knew you were completely free to choose? Solitude becomes your ally when you stop seeing it as the absence of something and start experiencing it as the presence of everything. In quietude, you hear the wisdom that was always there. In silence, you find answers that the noise of the world never allowed to emerge. In your own company, you discover you were never really alone. You were just disconnected from yourself. But there's an even deeper secret that few know, a truth that can transform not just how you see solitude, but how you live your entire life. Here's the revelation that changed everything for the great masters of history. Solitude isn't about being separated from the world. It's about discovering that you were never separated from anything at all. When you go deep enough into conscious solitude, when you stop running from yourself and begin to investigate who you really are beneath all the layers of social conditioning, you make a surprising discovery. You discover that at the deepest core of your being, there isn't a separate I struggling against a hostile world. There's only pure consciousness, the same consciousness that animates all things. Mystics from all traditions speak of this. Ramana Maharshi called it the self with a capital S. Jesus spoke of the kingdom of heaven that is within you. Buddha discovered the interdependent nature of all things. They all found this truth not in temples or scriptures, but in the deep silence of consciousness itself. This is the great irony. You seek connection outside yourself, but the deepest possible connection lies in the discovery that the self you thought you knew is just a mental construction. Beneath this construction, there exists something infinitely vaster, more powerful, more connected to the totality of existence than you ever imagined. When you rest in this discovery, even for just a few moments, everything changes. You no longer need to seek validation because you recognize that your very existence is complete validation. You no longer need to fear rejection because you understand that what you truly are cannot be rejected. You no longer need to hide from yourself because you've discovered there's nothing to fear, only truth to be embraced. This is the strength found in solitude. Not the strength of an isolated ego fighting against the world, but the strength of life itself, recognizing itself through you. It's the strength of someone who knows beyond any doubt that they belong here, that they are an integral part of the cosmic web of existence, that they were never truly alone because they were never truly separate. Solitude, then, reveals itself not as prison, but as liberation, not as absence, but as fullness, not as separation, but as union with all that exists. You came into this world alone and will leave it alone, but this solitude isn't punishment, it's a gift. It's the opportunity to discover that you are much more than you imagined, much more connected than you dreamed, much more powerful than you dared believe. The next time you find yourself alone, remember, this isn't a moment to be filled or avoided. It's a portal to be crossed. It's an invitation to meet the one person you'll spend your entire life with, yourself. And in that knowing, in that deep friendship with yourself, you'll find a strength that no external circumstance can shake, a peace that no turbulence can disturb, a connection that no solitude can break. The world needs people who have found this strength, people who don't depend on external validation to know their worth. People who can be genuinely present because they're not running from themselves. People who can love freely because they're already complete. If this message has touched something in you, if you recognized a fragment of truth you might have already known but never heard, expressed this way, do 3 things. First, like this video so more people can find this transformative perspective. Second, subscribe to the channel because we'll continue exploring these profound truths that can change lives. And third, most importantly, share this message with someone who needs to hear that being alone is not being lost. It's finding your way home to yourself. Solitude is your portal. The strength is already within you. The moment to discover it is now.